Hey everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Labbe, Mary Kay Cabot, Ashley Bastock, recording this here on Wednesday. Just almost lost track of days there. We are definitely in the middle of summer here. Well, for us, the middle of summer, as we are about 6 weeks out from training camp. And so normally we do our 15 questions series, and that's going to be starting at cleveland.com/Browns. And a lot of times what we do is some accompanying pods with those. It gets a little tough as we get into like questions 13, 14, 15, and we're trying to talk about, Dustin Hopkins for 40 minutes. But I thought maybe what we would do is in this pod and maybe some other pods, just each of us throw out one of the questions we're going to write about, and then we'll just kick them around for a little while. So again, that 15 question series is going to be starting next week at cleveland.com/Browns. I think it's next week. Maybe it's the week after. Just keep an eye out for it. Ashley's nodding her head. It's the week after. I'm all thrown off on time if you can't tell. So I'm going to stop talking because of that. Mary Kay, give us a question.
All right. Well, I am going to start with a very big question. Can Myles Garrett live up to the bar that both Jimmy Haslam and Jim Schwartz set for him this season? Jimmy Haslam at the owners' meetings after Myles' $40 million extension and after his very public trade demand, Jimmy asked him to become a much better leader on this football team. Myles has said that he's willing to do that. So that's one of my questions. And then the other half of that is that Jim Schwartz threw out there that he expects him to have his best career season. So he's heading into now I'll have to count him up. Is this his 9th season?
I think it is. I looked that up recently. I think it is his 9th season.
Yeah. We might have to just confirm that in a second, but I think it is his 9th season. So heading into his 9th season, and I remember when he was a rookie and he talked about playing for 10 years, and my goodness, here we are already heading into his 9th season.
It is year 9.
9. Okay, good. And then, so Jim Schwartz set the bar at best season ever for Myles Garrett, and he feels like he's ready to do that too. So 2 enormous challenges for Myles Garrett to become the leader that they really need him to be and to have his best career season. Can he do it?
Okay, so let's talk about best career season. It's probably appropriate if you're watching on the YouTube. I'm wearing a Jurassic Park shirt today. So there we go. We're leading off with Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett has been like this picture of consistency year to year, right? Like every year it's double digit sacks, 13 and a half, 10, 12, 16, 16, 14, 14. Like you don't see that type of consistency when it comes to just racking up those sorts of numbers every year. I think we mentioned this on a pod a couple weeks ago, and I know I mentioned on a radio interview I did. There is still that one like marquee season almost missing from Myles Garrett on that Pro Football Reference page. Like there's that one, TJ Watt has the sack record season. And I know Aaron Donald, different position, but again, we're talking about great defensive lineman, Hall of Fame caliber defensive lineman. Aaron Donald has that 20 and a half sack season in 2018. This is kind of what we're talking about when we talk about another level to Myles Garrett. Obviously, he gets mentioned in things that only he and Lawrence Taylor have done. And, all of these incredible little factoids we get after every game. But there's still that one season that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, somebody's going to open up Myles Garrett's Pro Football Reference page and it's going to look awesome. And then they're going to look right in the middle of it. And it's going to be like, oh my God, remember that year when Myles had 23 sacks or whatever it was? Like that's the one thing that I still think is missing.
I think that's missing. And the other thing I think that's missing with Myles, and to be clear, it's not entirely in his control, is a dominating postseason performance. Because the last time the Browns were in the postseason, they were getting embarrassed in the wild card round, and I'm sorry, Myles disappeared in that game. The whole defense disappeared in that game, to be fair. No one got a sack. No one was able to take down CJ Stroud in that game when they were embarrassed by the Houston Texans. So for me, those are like the couple of things missing. I think Myles needs to, when you think about Aaron Donald, for example, different position, but you think about him dominating in that postseason when the Rams went out and won a Super Bowl over the Bengals. Like, that's what you remember. So that's not entirely in Myles's, control. They have to have a good team around him. They're not going to go to the Super Bowl this year. So, yeah, I'm interested to see if he can at least do the thing of getting 20 sacks this season, breaking his record. And Mary Kay made a good point a couple weeks ago. Like, are the days of just 20 plus sack seasons gone with how mobile quarterbacks are? It's a possibility, but Myles in theory has the skill to sort of make that a moot point. But I think it's, yes, upping the sack numbers, more game changing plays like forcing fumbles, recovering fumbles, those sorts of things, and postseason success. And that to me is like the next level for him.
Yeah, I mean, you think about his fellow Texas A&M alum Von Miller has a Super Bowl MVP in his pocket right now. It's hard for a defensive player to win the Super Bowl MVP, and that was a unique year for him. That is the other piece of this. And Mary Kay, I think Myles wants that too. It's part of why he made that trade request back in Super Bowl week. He wants to have a chance to get to January, play deep into January, into early February, and have a chance to have a moment like Aaron Donald had in that Super Bowl against Cincinnati when he pressures Joe Burrow into that final incompletion. Like that's what Myles Garrett wants. And obviously when he's had opportunities in the postseason, he hasn't had these dominant runs yet. But I think in an honest moment, Myles Garrett would say he wants the same thing.
I would think so. And I do think that that is what we need to see more of from Myles, are those take over the game moments where he was just absolutely unstoppable. Now, down for down, he's unblockable, especially if you're trying to do it with one person, but he hasn't necessarily always been unstoppable in terms of taking over a football game in any way he can and affecting it in multiple ways. And I know I've harped before on that he needs more passes defensed. He needs to bat down more passes. I mean, if you're not going to get to the quarterback, maybe there's something else you can do in that space in terms of batting down some passes. But I would like to see more of those. I would like to see more forced fumbles. He's never had more than 4 in a season, and four is a lot. Four is fine, but he's only ever had 2 fumble recoveries in a season. That's his high. So I think he could do a little bit more there. And, you know, if you compare him to some of the other greats in some of these numbers, some of these guys do have a little bit better numbers in these areas. So I do think that he could do a little bit more with tackles for losses, quarterback hits, everything. I think he's got another gear in him. And I think that so many times I've heard his position coaches, defensive coordinators say that he has more in him. And I think the Browns are saying, okay, show us what you got. Let's see what else you have. And I think that he seems like he's ready to take it up a notch in the production realm and in the leadership space.
So let's talk a little more about that other piece of this, and that is the leadership part of it. And it's something that he got asked about when he showed up to minicamp. Of course, there's a lot of discourse around it when he wasn't at OTAs. Actually, when we talk about Myles Garrett as the leader, we've talked about he's not like that rah-rah. You know, I'm sure he has given the speech in the middle of the huddle before the game at some point, but he's not really that guy all the time. And Myles is he's pretty real. Like, he's not going to force it if it's not there. He's going to be Myles Garrett. So he's a difference. His leadership looks different than other guys. But if you're going to sign that contract, if you're going to demand a trade and question the culture of the team and question whether this team can win and then become the richest defensive player in the league, that does come with, as Jim Schwartz was saying, that comes with a greater responsibility to lead and be that culture change.
Yeah, and that for me, I would argue not to harp on attendance at voluntary practices, but for the sake of this discussion, let's harp on attendance at voluntary practices. And I would say, I think in that way, Myles is not off to the best start this year, shockingly, and I don't think he's off to having his best year in that regard. And I made this point during minicamp or towards the end of the voluntary sessions, and it's that we can say Myles is not a vocal leader, and I think it's okay that he's not. But then by extension, if you're talking about leading through actions, I would argue attendance at something that's non-mandatory, that isn't necessarily about you, but setting a tone and helping other younger guys, I would think that's pretty important. So yes, like I think for me, what this can look like going forward is if it is another down year, a sub 500 year, what is Myles's demeanor going to be like? Is he once again going to get disgruntled? Who knows? And now he has that no trade clause in his contract, obviously. So he has a bit more power there. Would he come back around if it is another losing season, or is he going to remain true to his word? And I think everyone has been understanding about this is a business, and Myles said what he felt, and everyone's able to move past it. Okay, well, if this team wins 6 or 5 games this year, I guess what is the tone going to be for Myles is certainly a top question for me. And I think there might be some opportunity for him to, I guess, answer that question this year, I'll say.
Yeah, I know people love the OTA attendance talk and all that. I don't, like, again, I'm not as bothered by Myles not being there, but also the counter to that is if he had shown up all offseason and been there at every OTA practice, think about what we'd be saying. Think about the stuff we'd have been writing, Mary Kay, if Myles had been there from day one. So, like, that's the counterpoint. We'd have been like, man, this is a different Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett really is all the way back in. He's here to change the culture and all of that. So that's kind of the counterpoint is, well, does it matter? Maybe not. But also think about how we'd be talking about him had he been there every single time we were out there.
Yeah, I was actually kind of surprised that he did not participate in OTAs this year, at least not even the last week of OTAs. I was actually a little surprised given that Jimmy Haslam did throw down the leadership gauntlet. So I thought he would really take up that challenge and go above and beyond the call of duty, because I think the Browns went above and beyond the call of duty by rewarding Myles with that wonderful contract, making him the highest paid NFL non-quarterback player. And I really thought that he would be here for some or all of those OTAs. And when we talk to other leaders like Denzel and Jordan Hicks, they talk about the importance of being here and why they are here and what it means to them and what it means to others for them to be here. So I did think that he would come and do that and be a part of that. But now that's behind us. We have to move on from that. And from here on out, he's got to show how he is going to step up those leadership efforts. So I'm anxious to see what that's going to look like. I don't know. Maybe we'll see more in training camp. Maybe we'll see him working with younger guys off to the side even more, which we saw a fair amount of that last year. Maybe he will be talking more to these quarterbacks. He's very plugged into the whole quarterback picture now. So let's see what he's going to do with this now that we have to set aside that early part of it.
Okay, let's get to another question. Ashley, what was there a question you were excited about that you've got on your list?
Well, I think it might be kind of fitting to go to the other side of the trenches for my question here. And let's talk a little left tackle, because what I will be writing about is Dawand Jones going to establish himself at left tackle? I think this is a really interesting discussion. I think it was interesting to hear from Dawand this spring and have him say he wasn't too crazy about the idea of making this move. He's just been on the right side for so long. But on the same token, he's done a ton of work to try to make this a successful move, both physically. He's totally changed his body composition. He looks much leaner. He's put on more muscle in the hopes of staving off injuries and truly, for me, establishing himself at left tackle. I think Dawand has the drive. I think Dawand has the size. I think really the biggest question is, can Dawand Jones stay healthy? His first two seasons, they ended prematurely because of a knee injury and then a broken tibia, I want to say. It's tibia, two bones there. Fibula. Mary Kay, no, correct me. It's
was
the
it
fibula.
Mary Kay a fibula?
Fibula. Broken fibula against New Orleans this past year, which, we talk about this. Broken bones are more of a freak thing than anything. But I do think him staying healthy and finishing out a season is a big question. He has made that a personal goal of his to play in every regular season game this year. So I think to me that's one of the biggest obstacles standing in the way between Dawand Jones and answering the question, is he going to have longevity at that position?
Yeah, the injury thing is interesting because it's not like he's pulling a hamstring every week and missing game. I mean, these have been catastrophic injuries, a broken bone. You can't, what do you do to avoid a broken bone? But also at the same time, Mary Case, there are guys in all sports, but there are definitely guys in the NFL that sometimes just get hurt. And I don't know. I know that sounds stupid, but sometimes that happens. And you think about a guy like Joe Thomas, who played all those snaps in a row. Like, it just didn't matter. He could get rolled up on. It never mattered. Myles Garrett, I mean, I've seen Myles Garrett take shots where his knee bends a weird way or a funky way, and he's just like a physical freak who doesn't suffer those catastrophic injuries. Joel Bitonio, for the longest time in those trenches, managed to avoid it. So I do think even though those injuries were both they were kind of catastrophic, almost unavoidable injuries, I do still think it's worth worth noting that we've had 2 seasons of Dawand Jones where he hasn't been able to finish the season through no fault of his own, but it's something that's happened. And if you're going to have a guy that you view as your long-term left tackle, you got to have him out there for, at the very least, you got to have him out there for 14, 15 games a season. If not, we're not going to hold him to the Joe Thomas standard here, but he's got to be out there.
Right, and let's hope you didn't just jinx Myles
Garrett.
I
just jinxed,
Myles and Joel. I know. The minute you were saying that, I know you could feel.
I know.
Just that jinx vibe going through your body. I just kind of felt it.
It's going to look really bad when something happens to him in training camp and people come back and find me wearing this stupid Jurassic Park shirt. And I'm talking about Myles Garrett never gets hurt. That's going to look real bad for me.
It is remarkable, though, for him to play at the level that he plays at, to take on the double and triple teaming that he plays, and to have made it through his first 8 seasons without some big, major season-ending injury. It really is quite incredible. So we're hoping for him that obviously continues. But as far as Dawand is concerned, yes, I think health is a major, major piece of it. One of the things that I really noticed, and I know you guys did too, during these OTAs and the mini camp, for as big as he is, and he is a little bit leaner and more muscular right now, he's moving really well. He's moving really, really quickly for a big man. And remember, he was a basketball player, so he's used to motoring. He just looks like he's ready to pull and do all the things that he needs to do in this overhauled zone blocking scheme that Mike Bloomgren is putting into place. So he looks really good that way. And I mean, when you think of that big of a guy and trying to get past him, it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes. Now, there will be growing pains. There will be growing pains because of how they play the position, how they play on that offensive line. And there will be times where he will be left out on an island, unless, of course, he's getting chipping help from a tight end or whatnot. So there will be times where someone is going to maybe make him not look as good as he wants to look. And he's going to have to get through that because he's not used to that happening. So he's going to have to learn to over the adversity of getting beat and not let it rattle him. He can't let it rattle him. He hasn't finished a season in a long time, and he can't let that get in his head. He's got to just stick with it and know that in the early going, they're going to test him and they're going to be trying to figure out how to foil him and what his weaknesses are. So he's just going to have to buck up and get through those times because those times are going to be tough. I have seen him spending time with Myles Garrett already, talking about what are guys going to try to do to me. So I think that's one place where Myles can be really, really instrumental in helping Dawand, is to figure out, regardless of where they're coming from, are they coming to the inside, or they're going far around the outside? What moves are they going to be making, and how are they going to be trying to attack me and my weaknesses and my strengths? So those are some things that I think that he's going to have to worry about a little bit. And we already know that he has expressed at least a little bit of consternation about playing left tackle, because he is switching how his brain works from spending most of his career in college on the right side. Now he's moving over to the left side, and there are just different ways of thinking about this. And he's going to have to be ready for that. It's not going to be automatic for him like it would be on the right side. But I certainly think that he can do it. What he sometimes might lack in terms of technique or muscle memory on the left side, he can make up for that just with his sheer brute size and strength. So, I mean, he takes up a lot of real estate when he's over there. So he's going to have to use that to his advantage, but it's not going to be as natural to him as stepping in there again and playing right tackle. So we'll have to see how it goes.
I will say one of the reasons that I would be optimistic is, like, I almost look at last year and I almost view it as a cross-off. Like, he came back, he was never really healthy. Of course, he got hurt at the end of the year and didn't get to finish the year. I mean, halfway through the year is when the injury happened, so he didn't get to finish the year. His rookie year, when he was playing right tackle, he looked pretty good. And you were wondering, like, man, do they have too many tackles? Okay, I was wondering, do they have too many tackles? Like, what does this mean? Do you just throw Dawand over there and figure out, I mean, we're talking about, do you play Jack Conklin at left tackle now and let Dawand be your right tackle? So, Ashley, if I'm looking for reasons to be optimistic, it's that I'm not as worried about what I saw last year and some of the struggles last year, because when he was healthy his rookie year, he slid right into that right tackle position and he looked really good.
Yeah, and I think too, Dawand was one of the guys, in my opinion. Obviously, he was not 100% healthy last year. I think that was a lot of his issues. Like, he wanted to get back so bad and knew they needed help. He was maybe playing on something that he shouldn't have been in a perfect world. And I mean, I think that's evidenced by he had to have another procedure to clean up that knee that they fixed the year prior, this offseason, this winter. So I think there was that issue, and I think he was also a guy that struggled without Bill Callahan. And I think things are going to be better, and things already have been better with Mike Bloomgren there as opposed to Andy Dickerson last year, who obviously the Browns parted ways with him. It just wasn't working in the same way. And Bloomgren is really a true Callahan disciple. And I think Dawand needs that kind of coaching. And Joel's talked about it. We got Dawand going about Bloomgren a little bit as well. They're obviously back to a scheme that is more equivalent to what Dawand was in as a rookie. So that should be beneficial. Joel, that quote from Joel kind of says it all. You need your O-line coach to be a little bit of an expletive sometimes. I think Dawand is a guy that really thrives from that kind of coaching, and you get the best out of him that way. So all of that is pointing as well to a positive in that column.
Okay, I'm going to go with a question where Dawand Jones could be the answer to this question, but this is very open-ended. So I was trying to think which of the guys that Andrew Berry has drafted that are still on this team. So you can go all the way. Are there any 2020 guys left? I'm sure there are. Which of those guys that he's drafted that are still on this team have the most to gain this season? So we can each throw somebody out or whatever. So I'm looking at two corners, and I actually think I'm going to go a different direction than I was going to go like 30 seconds ago. I'm actually going to say Martin Emerson, because Emerson is coming off a year where, like a couple years ago, we were just all in on Martin Emerson. It was like, man, this guy is an absolute. I think we all have done, Mary Kay, you did like the Martin Emerson life story. And then I know Ashley and I have both talked to him for different stories, and we've done different interviews with him. Like, this was a very Martin Emerson Jr. podcast for a while, and with good reason. He was really good. Then last year struggled a little bit. I thought he kind of rallied towards the end of the year. I'm not like an expert on cornerback play, but I thought he rallied a little bit. And so now we're going into 2025. It's year 4 for Martin. That, of course, means a contract year. And I think because of that, he might be the one with the most to gain, because if he has a really strong year, he could lock himself into that number 2 cornerback role and make a lot of money in that role as well. And the Browns can be set for the foreseeable future at those 2 spots if Martin Emerson plays really well. So I think he's my answer to this question as to which Andrew Berry draft pick has the most to gain this season. So you guys can talk about Martin if you want to throw another name out there that's in your head. Obviously, we just spent a ton of time on Dawand. If he becomes a long-term left tackle, that's very beneficial financially to him as well. So there are some good candidates for this, Mary Kay.
Yeah, there really are some good candidates. And this is a good question. I really do like this question. So I do think that Martin is a great answer to this question. I think he's a tremendous answer to this question, because if he reaches his upside potential, then I did think when I first watched him as a rookie that he had Pro Bowl potential by his 3rd season or whatever. And last year he took a few steps back. And I think part of that might have had to do with being left out on an island a little bit more than he probably should have been at times. So I think they need to give him a little bit more help in terms of maybe not always having him in a one-on-one situation against perhaps the best wide receiver on the opposing team. I think that they can mix it up a little bit with some man and some zone. So I think that there is a better season ahead for Martin, but I certainly think that he fits the bill in this category to have a lot to gain. I do think that there are others. There are a lot of guys that we could throw out there in this category. David Bell is another one. David Bell is someone who, if he can come back from his hip injury, it's a dislocated hip. So that's not an easy thing to come back from. But I think he's someone that has more upside than he's been able to show yet. So he's someone that I would put in there. And then, of course, Alex Wright is coming off of an injury, but I think he's got a double-digit sack season in him. So I think he's someone that we can kind of throw in there and kick around in this way. And there's probably a whole lot more too. I think Grant Delpit has a Pro Bowl season in him if he can add in some of those, some more of those big plays and some of those takeaways and punch the ball out here and there. So I think there are a number of players that we could talk about in this space.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many of these. For me, Delpit, the way I look at Delpit is it's more, he's like got to live up to it. Like he's gotten the contract now. He's kind of been, I think now he's the most, or he's been the most expensive safety in that room. So he's got to live up to that contract now, as at least he's already gotten it. But yeah, I mean, there's so many of these, like, you know, you mentioned Alex Wright is going to be a free agent. Sid Tillman could be the number 2 receiver. There's so many guys that it's sort of put up or shut up time for for some of these guys. Ashley, who did you have in mind?
I mean, I think the other corner is another guy you mentioned, Dan, which is Greg Newsome, because he's playing on that 5th-year option. So, like, to me, that's never a good sign, really, especially if you're a 5th-round pick and you're going through that 5th-year option, or you're a 1st-round pick, I'm sorry, and you're going through that 5th-year option. That's not the position you want to be in. Ideally, you would like to have gotten an extension already worked out by this point. But, I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, for a long time, the only 2 first-round picks we've had to judge this regime by have been Jed Wills and Greg Newsome. And Jed Wills, it didn't work out with. He's obviously not here. He didn't solve your problem at left tackle. And if Greg's gone, I also think that's fairly concerning in terms of how we are judging drafts by this regime. So who knows? Like, I think if Martin excels, like the Greg Newsome time here just might end up being over. So in that way, I do almost think you should put Martin over Greg for a lot of reasons. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's too late for Greg here, so to speak, but I would argue it's never too late as long as you're on the team and getting the chance to play. Maybe he'll have his best season ever.
You know, this category, this question brings to mind a number of things. When you think about some of what has happened with Andrew Berry's top draft picks, or at least picks between 1st and 3rd, 4th round. You've got Jed Wills. He's out of football right now with a knee injury that basically just lingered, and he had another procedure this offseason that is going to knock him out for this whole entire season and maybe his entire career. And he was obviously Andrew Berry's first round pick here in 2020. Then you've got Greg, once again, playing on his 5th-year contract, wondering if he's going to get that extension. You've got JOK, who's not playing this year. He's someone that they traded up for to draft in the 2nd round. And he had that scary neck injury. This is nobody's fault, any of these things, but they've just been a little star-crossed at some of these draft picks. You've got David Bell with a dislocated hip. Again, that's a hard thing to come back from. He had surgery on that. Then you can keep going. You can talk about Mike Hall. He had sort of a turbulent rookie season, which involved a suspension and then a knee surgery during the season that he's still recovering from. So there are not a whole lot of super crazy successful draft picks in this era, in part because so many of them have really been hurt by injuries. I mean, even Grant had suffered a ruptured Achilles early on in his tenure.
Before he even played a game.
Exactly. So it's been really kind of a tough road for some of these Andrew Berry draft picks.
And I think you feel that a little bit when you look at the kind of the depth on this roster. That's when you start to get some of these questions. And some of these guys either have just been, it's just been injuries, or maybe they've missed, or whatever it is like that. That's when you start to feel kind of the depth on this roster. And if a couple of these guys can show you something this season, that would go a long way towards maybe getting some wins this year, and also sort of having a clearer picture of who you can count on moving forward too. All right. Those are 3 of the 15 questions that are coming up at cleveland.com/Browns. Not next week, the week after. That's when that series is starting. It's going to run throughout July, pretty much all the way up through training camp. So again, cleveland.com/Browns is where those will go up. That's also where you can become a Football Insider subscriber. It's the blue banner at the top of the page. You can find us on YouTube, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. Instagram is Orange and Brown Talk, and our Twitter is Orange Brown Talk. For Mary Kay and Ashley, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening, everybody.